Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. And today's topic is a fun one. It's a Week 9 recap of the NFL. I think we have a lot to discuss here because the temperatures keep heating up, and on some of these coaches, and I think even on the players too as well. And we can get right back into the action here, but the storylines really are precluding here is Dak Prescott and CD Lamb leave the game against the Falcons on injuries, one with a hamstring, one with an arm that, as of this recording, they're going to say Dak Prescott's out for a few weeks. CD Lamb, it's a minor day-to-day injury, and they're going to keep on monitoring it. It's not serious as they claim, but it's obviously a nagging injury, which will develop into something else probably. And honestly, you saw the Jets beat uh, the Texans, and it seemed like the ship got right, with the Jets there. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot to discuss here. I think we're going to see some really great matchups for Week 10, which we'll discuss at the end of the podcast episode. And really, as a fan, you're going to start seeing some really great matchups because we're getting into divisional matchups that, usually those matchups usually preclude a lot of important things that we do as a fan and also in fantasy football and plenty of other things that we do. So, let's just keep that in mind going forward here is that there's a lot to discuss, and let's get right into it, shall we? Now, the fun part is that you have, like I mentioned, the Jets beat the Texans. Texans were heavily favored in that game, and I think it was kind of a parity game. I think it was more of a trap game, as they call it. And the Jets win that game by 8. Second half, they did a lot of, you can tell the Jets did some changes on the offensive side of coaching and made some really great decisions down the stretch there. The games that I really want to kind of talk about in the 12 or 1 o'clock window East Coast time is really what I saw from the Commanders. The Falcons and the Cowboy game is important, as well as the Bills and Dolphins game. Now, as a Patriots fan, there's not much to talk about with the Patriots. They lost, pretty handily. It was a back and forth matchup. They went to overtime because basically, Drake Maye had like 19 years in the pocket during one of the last plays of the game. So with that being said, the game got extended, but there's two terrible teams playing in that game, and that game should not have been into overtime. Patriots are now 2-7, and Mason Rudolph did pretty well. Tony Pollard went for over 120 yards. Calvin Ridley did his job in Tennessee. So for them to be 2-8, I get that. Divisional round matchups here, the Dolphins and the Bills, that was probably one of the better games of the 1 o'clock window. And I think that them winning on Bass's 61-yard field goal attempt shows kind of where we're at, and the Dolphins are not quite there yet. Tua Tagovailoa, he was getting cheers when he slid down the ground. I mean, it was just, I get it. They don't want him to get hurt, but why are we gonna why are we celebrating? The one thing that I really want to be remiss about, and I think is important, is that while we're talking about this, that team, the Bills, is doing really great things in the AFC East, right? They're going to probably win that division handedly. The Jets are, there's no way you're going to, Jets might come back and win the second place or get a wild card if they're lucky. But I think it's basically a foregone conclusion that it's pretty much a done year. They might finish 8-8 or 9-8. But that's what you're seeing. You're seeing some of these teams that need to kind of right the ship a little bit, and they do it. And then, watch what's going to happen here in Week 10 with these guys, right? So that's going to be very interesting. The Cowboys and Falcons game was arguably the game I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be more of a, back and forth on the offensive side of the ball, which it didn't really show up much on the Cowboys side. For offensive side of the ball, the Kirk Cousins and the Falcons move the ball pretty easily. 3 touchdowns, 222 yards. What you're seeing a lot of, though, and I think is for fantasy football players, it's kind of unique here is you're seeing a low yardage total for the quarterback play, but you're seeing a increase in total touchdowns. So you're seeing it kind of weirdly level off a little compared to years past where you'll see a 300-yard passing game with maybe only 2 touchdowns. So you're seeing kind of a weird trend that I'm noticing, especially in the daily fantasy. You're seeing more of a, are you going to complete 2.5 or 1.5 touchdowns, stuff like that. But that game, I had CD Lamb on yardage, and I didn't win that. Tough week for me on daily fantasy, but I mean, it happens, And when you play enough, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, right? So, um, you really can't control. You can't win them all, as they say. You can try, but that's all you can do. And and I mean this respectfully, and I really truly do. The Cowboys are a dumpster fire, and it's not going to get any better. So for the fans that think that it is going to get better, hold on to your hats. It's only going to get worse from here. If Dak Prescott's out, you're going to see Mr. Cooper Rush play, which we saw him a little bit in the third and fourth quarter. I think it was the fourth quarter. Didn't really do much, and I kind of expect that to be done the same. I think it's going to be a tough deal all the way around. And I'm not trying to dismiss Cowboy fans, but I am going to dismiss their hyperbolic sensitivities when it comes to winning, and that's how I'm going to do it. The cool game I thought of, we can go with a couple quick games here. The Bengals and Raiders. Raiders are still trying to figure themselves out. 41-24. Joe Burrow winning pretty handedly, 5 touchdown throws, which is pretty sweet. The problem is he didn't have any yards. He had 251 yards. That is nothing. That is literally nothing. That means you ran the ball 27 times, which they did. 27 times for 120 yards, and you threw the ball on short yardage situations. Like, that is not what you want. But the Chargers and the Browns, Justin Herbert gets his stuff done. J.K. Dobbins, phenomenal. If you're talking about a running back that you could probably steal some points from, is J.K. Dobbins out there in Los Angeles. Excuse me, I call it San Diego still, but just a great game all the way around. The Commanders and Giants. The Commanders were expected to win that game. But the crazy thing for me is seeing Jalen Daniels, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, very blah kind of day, but still got the job done, right? So it's a 27-22 in division. Probably have the best start of their season in quite some time, which is pretty sweet if you ask me. What I'm very, very, I would say, not in tune with is the Saints and the Panthers game that I just missed the entirety of, I guess, when I was paying attention to other things. But it was a 23-22. It came down to the last drive or something and a mixed extra point and things like that. So when you see all that stuff happening, you kind of go, what did I miss throughout the game? And from what it's the tail of the tape, Alvin Kamara did his job. Derek Carr may not be the quarterback. That's why they fired the head coach of the Saints. I think it was Monday morning they announced that they fired him. The games on the 4:00 window were pretty remarkable, if you ask me. I think the Broncos and Ravens game. I'll say this right now: if Derrick Henry is not considered for most valuable player in the NFL as a non-quarterback, it is a disgrace to the NFL. What that man is doing is remarkable. And I thought maybe he was going to have some kind of down year because in Tennessee he got used a lot. I don't think any football fan will tell you or dismiss that idea. He was used a ton in the run game in Tennessee. And so maybe as the years progressed and the amount of NFL, years have ticked on, you would think that he would slow down or have some kind of issues of mobility or some kind of injury. And nope, it is a man amongst boys. And that man is King Henry for a reason. Lamar Jackson also did pretty well. 3 touchdowns, 16 for 19 with 280. So what you're seeing remarkably done there by Lamar is barely any touches by Lamar. I think it was a complimentary football game, though, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, you know, that's how you see it, right? So the Bears and Cardinals game, I thought that game was going to be a little bit more competitive. It kind of got out of whack in a hurry. 14 points in the second quarter, a safety at one point, 3 field goals, no touchdowns by the Bears at all. So you see kind of this weird parity there. The Jaguars and Eagles, that game should not have been close. The scoreboard is not indicative to how that game actually was. The Eagles let them come back into this game, and at 28-23, Saquon Barkley had 159 yards rushing. It was basically a Barkley show, and it should never have been that competitive, and it was. That's the scary thing about that. The Lions and the Packers, legitimately 24-14. Lions obviously show pretty handedly why they're number one in that division, and they continue to do so. Complimentary football game for the Lions, if you ask me, at all 3 phases of the game. Jordan Love, it was definitely a game that could have been won or been at least closer down the stretch. Jordan Love, I believe, is day to day on an injury. So plus it was raining pretty good there in Green Bay. So you kind of knew it was going to be more of a run game, and that very well could be that. I just think that legitimately you have some serious situations, and I'm not trying to dismiss the Packers, but I think they're probably 1 or 2 players away from really challenging the Lions down the stretch. The defensive side of the ball is there. I think I know. Listen, the Lions scoring 24 on them doesn't really show that, but the game was pretty competitive for 2 divisional rivals going at each other. To only score, I think, a total of 38 points. I mean, I think it was the over was like 41. And obviously with the rain, it changed that a little bit. The handicaps kind of came in and didn't do that. But the Rams Seahawks game, in my view, was kind of a blah, kind of differential. Why are we doing this type of game? And really, and remarkably enough, thank God I didn't have to watch that game because it was just the scoring didn't really do it any justice. Cooper Kupp back in the action really didn't show much. They actually, from what I understand, they ejected Puka Nacua for really nothing, and I don't think it should have been an ejection, but unfortunately, it became a serious problem, and obviously they didn't have a lot of offensive tools to throw. Geno Smith did his thing. Kenneth Walker the third. The game was really a back and forth matchup. Enigma did his thing. He had 180 yards and 2 touchdowns and 180 yards. So in my opinion, it was pretty good. It just seemed to me like there's definitely something going on there. Down the stretch. So I would say the game that was the most disappointing game of the week, and I mean this remarkably honest with you, is the Colts and Vikings game was the disappointment of the week. And I thought this game was going to be seriously a back and forth game, and it wasn't. And it just became nothing more than just downright stupidity. And yeah, it was just bad. Terrible offensive display, terrible defensive display. But yeah, man, see what happens. In the Buccaneers and Chiefs game, I think there was never a question. Patrick Mahomes did 3 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, 106 yards, 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce had 14 receptions. It was just a really complimentary game by the so all that. So I mean, I think it's just a different game now, man. And I think going into Week 10. Week 10, you got the Bengals and Ravens on Thursday night, which I suspect will be a barn burning matchup, pending the weather in Baltimore. The Bills and Colts, that might be a competitive game for Week 10. You got the Chiefs and the Broncos playing at 12 or 1 o'clock. Saints and Falcons are playing at 1 o'clock. The Buccaneers and 49ers are playing at 1 o'clock. I say the Eagles and Cowboys are playing at 4:30. So that's going to be pretty competitive, in my opinion. And really, you got the Browns, Packers, Raiders, and Seahawks on bye week. So I think the game of the week is arguably going to be the Cowboys and the Eagles. A little bit of Steelers and Commanders just because of the close proximity to the two teams. And then you have Falcons and Saints is another rivalry game, as they say, but the Falcons are 6-3. They're heavily favored. Kansas City's heavily favored in their matchup. Bills are heavily favored against the Colts. Chicago's heavily favored against the Patriots. So it's going to be a kind of the game of the week. Really, they stand on Sunday night or Thursday night football for sure. Monday night football is Dolphins and Rams, not really interesting. Lions and Texans on Sunday night football, really not much action, and it just you'll see how it goes, right? So, all right, everybody, appreciate listening. Listen to my rant and rave. As always, have a great rest of your week. Gamble well, fantasy football lineups well. Have a good one.